So today we are diving into the world of cane corsos. And something that seems to cause a lot of debate online,
It definitely does.
can they swim?
Right.
I think if you're thinking about getting one of these dogs, you probably are curious about this.
Yeah, you probably are.
If you live near water or anything like that.
Yeah.
So what is the answer?
Well, it's actually not so simple.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's more nuanced than just a yes or a no.
Interesting.
We actually found a bunch of great information, though, from the AKC, Adopt a Pet, Dogster, and Hepper,
Okay, great.
all about Cane Corsos.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too.
Okay, so what makes them so different when it comes to swimming then?
Well, we have to look at their physical build.
Okay.
And, they were originally bred as working dogs in Italy.
Right.
And they were known for their strength and agility on land, and their build reflects that.
So how does that translate into the water,
So they have these deep chests
Okay.
that are super powerful, but it creates a lot of buoyancy,
Oh, okay.
so they can stay afloat,
Okay.
but it also makes it really hard to maneuver in the water.
I see. So it's kind of like, I don't even know what to compare that to.
It's kind of like if you were trying to swim with one of those big inflatable rings, like one of the giant ones
Okay.
around your waist.
Yeah, I get it.
And on top of that, you add in the dense muscles,
Mm-hmm.
that thick double coat they have.
Right.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like they're carrying extra weight even before they even get in the water.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all that muscle, as amazing as it is on land, just makes them more dense,
Uh-huh.
which means they get tired in the water super quickly.
Okay. Interesting.
And this is where it gets kind of interesting when you compare them to brachycephalic breeds.
Okay.
So like pugs, bulldogs.
Right.
Now, Cane Corsos aren't exactly brachycephalic.
So they don't have the super flat faces.
Right, exactly. But they do have a kind of shorter muzzle compared to some other breeds. So it still plays a part.
So even though it's not as extreme, it's still something to consider.
It is because, it can mean that breathing is a little less efficient.
Right.
And that's really important when you're swimming, when you're exerting yourself.
Definitely.
So it's just one more thing that kind of adds to the challenges in the water.
This is so interesting. So we've got the history, right? We talked about them being working dogs.
Right.
And then we've got their actual physique. And then even just the shape of their face comes into play a little bit.
It all ties together.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
So for someone who is thinking about getting a Cane Corso, what does all of this mean if they're wondering, okay, will my dog be able to swim?
It really means understanding that even though they can technically swim,
Okay.
they're not natural water dogs.
Okay.
Their instincts and, their physical traits just aren't really made for it.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so we need to be really careful then when it comes to Cane Corsos and water.
Yeah, definitely.
What are some of the specific risks that we're talking about here?
I think that's a great question. And the sources we looked at were all pretty clear on this.
Okay.
Even if a Cane Corso can swim a little bit,
Uh-huh.
they just aren't natural swimmers, and it makes them higher risk.
Okay.
Like drowning is a real concern,
Wow.
especially if they panic.
Yeah.
If they get out too far,
Right.
get tired.
I see.
So it's not just can they swim,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
can they swim safely
Right, and for how long?
for any amount of time. Yeah.
Okay.
And remember how we talked about that thick double coat?
Yeah.
That's great on land,
Uh-huh.
but in the water, it can actually be a problem.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, when it gets wet, it gets really heavy.
Oh, okay.
So it's even harder for them to stay afloat.
Right.
And it can make them more prone to hypothermia,
Oh, I see.
especially in cold water.
So it's not just about deep water. It could even be like a cold lake or something like that.
Exactly. You have to be really careful about water temperature.
Okay.
Especially when it starts to get cold out.
Yeah. Okay.
And, beyond the physical risks,
Uh-huh.
there's also the psychological side of things.
Right. So if they have a bad experience,
Exactly.
they might be afraid of the water.
Yeah, like if they're forced into the water
Yeah.
or, if they're struggling and they feel like they're going to drown.
Right.
I mean, that could definitely make them scared to go back in.
Yeah.
So again, it's all about going slow, making
Uh-huh.
sure they're comfortable.
Lots of positive reinforcement.
Exactly.
Okay. So speaking of that,
Yeah?
let's talk about training.
Okay.
What are some of the things, some good ways to introduce a Cane Corso to the water so that they're safe?
Well, one thing you can do is use a lure or a toy
Yeah.
to kind of encourage them to go in the water.
So their favorite toy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Throw it a little ways.
Uh-huh.
Start in the shallow end, obviously. and just kind of see if you can entice them to go in and get it.
Right. And then as they get more comfortable, you can throw it further and further.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
even when you're first starting out, a
Yeah.
life jacket is a really good idea.
Okay.
It just gives them a little extra help staying afloat.
Right. That makes sense.
And it helps them feel more secure so they can really focus on learning to swim
I see.
without feeling panicked.
Right. So the life jacket can really make a difference.
Yeah, especially if they're nervous
Okay.
or if they've had a bad experience before.
And lots of praise when they do a good job.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
You want to reward them when they do something good?
Yeah.
Give them treats.
Yeah.
They're their favorite toy.
Positive reinforcement.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Are there any other, like, special techniques for cane corsos that we should know about?
Well, one thing that I think is really helpful
Okay.
is finding a trainer, someone who really knows Cane Corsos,
Okay.
to work with you and your dog. Because they can really help, tailor the training to your dog's specific needs.
So it's like having a coach, basically.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
And, before we move on, I think it's important to talk about some of the myths out there about cane corsos and swimming.
Oh, yeah. I think that's a good idea.
Because,
Okay.
people get the wrong idea.
Yeah.
And it can cause a lot of anxiety.
Okay, so what are some of the most common myths that you saw?
Well, one is that all cane corsos hate water
Okay.
and that they're all bad swimmers.
I mean, that just doesn't sound right.
Right.
That's like saying all humans hate broccoli.
Exactly.
Some do, some don't.
It really depends on the dog.
Yeah.
Another myth is that because they're big and strong,
Uh-huh.
they'll automatically be good swimmers.
Yeah, you would think that.
But like we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
their build actually makes it harder to swim.
Right. It's counterintuitive.
It is, yeah.
So bigger is not always better.
Nope, not in this case.
Eh,
Okay, cool. So we've busted those myths.
we have.
Are there any other, words of caution that you want to leave us with before we finish up this part of our deep dive?
Yeah, one last thing.
Okay.
Even if your Cane Corso seems to love swimming
Uh-huh.
and they've had a lot of success in training,
Yeah.
you still can't get complacent.
Oh, right, okay.
You always have to be careful around water
Okay.
because even confident swimmers can get tired.
right.
They can run into things in the water.
Oh, yeah.
Anything can happen.
So supervision is key.
Yes. All
And the life jacket.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, I think that's really good advice. Okay, so we've learned a lot about, their history, their build, training, safety, all that.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of ground.
So what I'm really curious about now
Yeah.
is, what are people's actual experiences?
Oh, yeah, good point.
What are Cane Corso owners saying about their dogs and swimming?
Right. So to wrap things up, let's get into some real life stories.
Okay, cool. I'm excited to hear about this.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how it all plays out, in the real world.
Right.
So one owner said their Cane Corso was like a total landlubber,
Okay.
wanted nothing to do with the water.
Really? Even for a treat?
Nope.
Well,
But then others said their dogs would splash around in the shallow end, but they wouldn't go any deeper.
yeah, it seems like that's kind of a common thing.
It is, they're happy to play around, but
Right.
they're not really into the deep end.
Not really divers.
No, not really.
Okay, interesting.
But, there are always exceptions.
Oh, okay.
I read this one story about a Cane Corso who loved fetching toys in the pool.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah, so with the right training and introduction, some of them can actually really enjoy swimming.
So you really can't just, make a blanket statement about the whole breed.
Nope. Every dog is different.
Right. Okay, I like that.
Yeah, and one owner's story, it really showed how important it is to introduce them to water the right way.
Oh, okay.
Because their Cane Corso had a bad experience as a puppy. And it was scared of water for life after that.
Wow, so it can really stick with them.
Yeah, even if it seems like a small thing.
Right, so patience, positive reinforcement, help them
Exists.
feel safe.
It's so important.
Okay, so
Yeah.
now that we've, gone through all of this information,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway here?
I think the biggest thing is that there's no one-size-fits-all answer when it comes to Cane Corsos and swimming.
Right.
You really have to understand your dog,
Yeah.
their personality, any past experiences they've had.
And, of course, safety first.
Always, no matter what.
Okay, good. Anything else before we wrap up this deep dive?
I think it's important to remember that what we talked about today,
Yeah.
it applies to any breed, really.
Oh, that's a good point.
Not just Cane Corsos.
So even if you have a different kind of dog,
Right.
think about their breed. Think about their personality.
and any experiences they might have had with water in the past.
Yeah, good advice.
And, make sure you're making good choices to keep them safe.
Right.
Whether they're, swimming in a pool or
Yeah.
just playing on the beach.
So it's about knowing your dog.
Exactly.
I think that's a great way to end this deep dive.
I agree.
So much good information about cane corsos and swimming, and really just, dogs and swimming in general.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, until next time, everyone, remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to our furry friends.